Well, there is chaos in Congress these days. A massive automatic tax increase, perhaps to the tune of $310 billion, is approaching, and now dozens of lawmakers are demanding their colleagues do something about it and do it now. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso is chairman of the Senate Republican Policy Committee, and he joins us live. Senator, always a pleasure to talk to you. The Federal Reserve estimates that the economy will grow roughly 2.9% next year. If Congress does nothing and these tax cuts become tax hikes, would that wipe out, in your judgment, all that economic growth?
It absolutely would. It would put us on we're approaching what's been called a fiscal cliff, and we're looking at a second recession if these tax hikes are allowed to go forth. But yet, if the president and Congress doesn't do anything, that's exactly what we're going to see. We're going to see every taxpayer in the country, anyone who works, will see their taxes go up on January 1st.
Well, given the current economic conditions, is there anyone who takes the serious position on either side of the aisle to allow these cuts to become tax hikes?
Well, it seems that the Democrats, by their inaction, are doing just that. You know, we had 5 votes on budgets last week in the Senate, including the president's own budget. Not one Democrat voted for any one of the budgets. I voted for all 4 of the Republican proposals. The Democrats didn't even vote for the president's, yet they have a responsibility to pass a budget every year. And I think if they're not willing to pass a budget, they shouldn't receive any pay. But people across the country know what they want. They want a healthy economy, and the Obama economy is not a healthy economy.
But, Senator, what about the cumulative deficit? And we're looking at the U.S. national debt clock ticking away right now. But the deficit is expected to exceed $10 trillion over the next 10 years. And extending the tax cuts would add an estimated $3.7 trillion to that. So aren't you making the debt and deficit much worse?
Well, by raising taxes on all Americans, you're actually hurting the economy. What we need is more people working. We need an opportunity economy, a growth economy, a healthy economy, ways to get people back to work. If we have more people working and then paying taxes, that's the way for overall tax revenue to go up and to deal with this. But, I mean, you're right, the deficit is awful. The president continues to spend more, and when he wants to raise taxes, it's not to actually get the deficit under control. It's because he has more ideas on how to spend the money. And I say, Mr. President, it's not your money.
But, Senator, there are some Democrats who say, wait a minute, you know, in terms of these tax cuts, especially among the rich, they don't really spend it and put it back into the economy. They save it, and so do others. So they say it's a canard for you to argue that it's going to hurt the economy.
Well, if nothing is done, if Congress doesn't act, and we wrote a letter to the president saying, don't let this get into a lame duck session where people will make rushed decisions, which won't be necessarily good decisions. If we don't act, taxes will go up on every American worker, period, come January 1st. So everyone is going to be hit with this. This will hurt the economy, and it's harder to get people back to work in this country right now because of the ongoing threats of increasing taxes, because of the regulations that keep coming out of Washington, the expenses of the health care law. All of those things make it a lot harder for the job creators to hire more people and get the economy going. And Greg, if these tax hikes go into place on January 1st because of inaction by Congress, it's going to hurt the country and really hurt our economy.
It's always put off to the last minute. I mean, doesn't this really come down to the usual, game of chicken? Both sides know they don't want the tax cuts to expire, but they wait until the last minute to try to gain an advantage, which means, especially in an election year, a decision won't be made until December, given the November 6th election.
That's what I'm trying to avoid, Greg, and that's why I sent the letter to the president along with other Republican senators. Even the president has said that an election year is not an excuse for inaction, but the president, with his budget to Congress and the results of the vote by the Democrats all against his budget are such that it seems that the Democrats in Congress have their head in the sand and are not interested in dealing with a problem that we ought to be dealing with today, not putting off, Greg, until after the elections. I think that people in Washington are unwilling to make the tough decisions. They're more concerned about the next election, and they ought to be more concerned about the next generation.
Yeah, but the outcome of the election may dictate how members of Congress could vote on this issue. Senator John Barrasso, as always, thank you for dropping by to speak with us.
Thanks so much for having me.